Thank you, Mr. Gwen, and let me thank all of you for your important testimony here today. We'll now go to the question and answer period for members, and I'll start with myself here. Ms. Tollestrup, I'm going to start with you. In your testimony, you highlighted the statutory changes made to the child support program in 1996. Can you speak to how the program's goals have changed over time, specifically after 1996?
Yes. The population served has continued to broaden, as has been discussed by all the folks here on the panel. So now the families served largely have never received TANF benefits. PROWARA changed distribution rules so that families formerly on cash assistance who still have state owed arrears, as again was mentioned, would have prioritization of payment of current support to them. The DRA went a step further then by allowing states the options to give some of the support that was collected for current TANF families to those families. So from that perspective, the policy changes in terms of the TANF families have been some of the most significant since PROWARA.
Thank you for that. Ms. Chesnick, I'm going to turn to you next. In your testimony, you discussed some of the new challenges state administrators face today when trying to collect child support payments. How has the rise in remote work or the gig work through app-based platforms made collecting child support more difficult?
People that work in the gig economy are independent contractors, so they don't have an employer-employee relationship with the individual or company from which they are receiving payment. And so we are currently unable to use income withholding as an enforcement tool. Income withholding has proven to be very effective over time and well accepted by child support payers because it makes it easy for them. The child support is withheld from their income and sent to the recipient. They don't have to write a check, address an envelope, mail it. It's taken care of, but it is not something that we're able to currently do with independent contractors. We're not trying to create an employer-employer relationship there, just simply be able to use withholding as a means of collecting support for people who work in the gig economy.
Thank you for that. And maybe just to follow up on that, I mean, is there statutory changes or recommendations you have to help codify that?
Yes, in fact, Ruth Ann probably can address that more fully as she has actually, they have actually adopted legislation that does that in Texas.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Thornton, why don't you respond to that, and then I'll get to my question for you.
Certainly, and I'd be happy to provide language to your offices to that reflect what Texas did. We have a statute in Texas that requires that for this limited purpose requires platforms and companies that run platform type work. I'm trying to not use the word employer, to comply with both new hire reporting and wage withholding. We've had some limited success. It is an area where I think having a national standard would be really helpful because these are platforms and companies that operate nationwide and not just in one jurisdiction. So we have had some limited success with it, but the model I think has been successful.
And it's been in place for how long?
I want to say 5 or 6 years.
Okay. I'm going to switch subjects here. As you know, states have different policies on whether to pass through child support payments to parents receiving public assistance benefits or keep some of that money to offset state costs. Can you explain what Texas's policy is and what the pros and cons of each approach are?
Certainly. So Texas is a state in which we do continue the practice of retained collections, but we pass through for current TANF recipients, we pass through the first $75 of support collected for a current support for a current recipient. I think the question that is being asked about retained collections versus full family distribution and pass-through is a really important one. As I mentioned in my opening statement, this is a very, very small percentage of our caseload, and over 97% of our collections do go directly to families. States like Texas, who continue retained collections, do so based on the original policy intent, which is that when public assistance is provided, that the state has a legitimate interest in recovering that. However, as I also mentioned, we've shifted our focus more from being a cost recovery state to avoiding costs. We recovered around $13 million in current and former TANF assistance in a fiscal year. We avoid over $800 million through the receipt of child support by increasing that family's stability and hopefully preventing them from needing public assistance in the future in the first place. A couple of practical considerations I would offer for the committee. Retained collections is also part of an important framework that requires mandatory cooperation with paternity establishment and the establishment enforcement of a child support order for benefits recipients. So even if from a legislative perspective, you set aside withholding or current retained collections being withheld, there is still a public interest in avoiding future public assistance outlays, and requiring cooperation with child support establishment and enforcement can help avoid those future public assistance outlays. So if there were a move toward full family distribution, I think it would be important to do so in a way that maintained that cooperation requirement for assistance receiving families. The other thing is, from a very practical standpoint, the timing and logistics of this. Having us as a state that recently deployed a new modern case management system, I can speak from experience that child support financials is very complex and very difficult to program well, and you can't get it wrong. And so it's something that states would need to invest heavily into their case management systems. When you're changing anything related to financial distribution, it needs to be done very carefully with very rigorous testing to ensure that there are no unintended consequences associated with doing so. So just being mindful of the timing. With so many states modernizing their systems, it may be difficult for them to implement a policy of this nature, and it certainly would be very expensive for them to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Dave.